Hello and welcome back, everyone, to Immigration Talk Show. And I'm Nipasa. We are going to be your host for today's session. We're going to be addressing a very alarming headline, that has been, you can say, taken over on Reddit and other immigration forums as well. So this claims that U.S. revoked 85,000 visas across multiple categories for public safety and national security. So there's a lot of people are panicking, students, workers, visitors, even green card holders, and applicants as well, because no one is sure who's actually affected. And we're going to be joined by a very important guest, a familiar face who, is a part of our channel as well. So it's going to be great to stay with us. We're streaming live right now on YouTube and also on LinkedIn, Facebook, and on X. You can check us out on Instagram as well. Our handle is Immigration Talk Show. On YouTube at Immigration Talk Show. So subscribe to us, ring that bell, and share this link with other folks who could benefit with this discussion today. So, yes, without further ado, um, today's topic of discussion is, did the US really revoke 85,000 visas across all categories for public safety? And as we discuss this, I hope you keep in mind this important disclaimer, and that is, by watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. And now, please help me welcome our guest for today, none other than Attorney Justin Rivera from Wasden Immigration Litigation. Hi, Justin. Good to have you back.
Hey, thanks for having me here as we wrap up the year.
I believe we just have about 8, 9 days more, and it's very nice. And how to say, the feeling of holiday where you really don't want to work, but from what the situation is, probably you have a lot of work as far as immigration is concerned. So tell me, how's the scenario with you at home and at work?
Yeah, there's definitely um, there's still work. There's still a lot going on. At the end of the year, visa cancellations, pushing people's appointments into next year that obviously anticipated returning in January. FDNS has decided now is a good time to ramp up doing on-site investigations of individuals because, of course, it's the time of year where people are going to be out of the country. And just the typical nonsense that we've seen throughout the entire year with this administration, randomly canceling people's visas through prudential visa revocations, which we'll get into in a moment, and just generally doing everything possible to make people who are following the law and trying to adhere to immigration lose status or not be able to come back into the country.
Right. And as we were speaking before we started this session, you're saying now, I mean, with the site visits and all that, it's crazy because it's the holiday season and folks are visiting their homes.
Yeah, I mean, it's premeditated, obviously. It's pretty apparent that DHS, instructed officers to carry out these visits at times that don't make sense for individuals. Trying to do a site visit for someone whose office is closed for Christmas and then trying to claim the person isn't cooperating with an FDNS investigation is really something. I have a client who tomorrow will be having to come back and open their office so that the officer can walk around and take pictures, even though we've already sent pictures to the officer of the office. And apparently that wasn't enough level of verification for this person. So unfortunately, the company has to have an employee come back from vacation to be available to stand there while somebody takes pictures of a work site.
Crazy for sure. But now coming back to our topic of discussion about the 85,000 visas. Well, what is going to happen? And my question maybe first would be, what sparked the claim that this 85,000 visas were revoked? And is this like a verified figure or just like an online rumor that went viral?
So I believe the State Department has said something about this at some point as trying to tout it as some sort of positive achievement for the year that there has been 85,000 visas revoked, like for the totality of the year. I think those figures are slightly misleading because I think there have been cases where they've double dipped. And what I mean by that is, for example, the F1 students whose visas were revoked and their services were terminated, a lot of their services got reactivated. And when they were reactivated, some of them basically had their visas reinstated, and it looks like they went back and canceled them again as a sort of, haha, we're gonna do the same thing we just did to you. So I think that they're overinflated numbers. The justification for the revocations are supposedly, national security, visa overstays, and I think that's kind of the main ones. But really, it's if we can find a justification to revoke a visa, we're going to do it, and that's what they've done. They're running everyone through databases. We're pretty sure they're utilizing AI, well or not well, but they're probably utilizing AI as a way to look at people's cases and see if they come across as a hit under one of the categories that they're looking into. Most of the people that I've spoken to that were on H1B and had their visa canceled were arrested at any point in their time in the United States. So I had an individual that I had a consultation with last week who their visa was revoked. This is amazing. I think, let me explain all of this to you so you guys can understand fully what we're dealing with the State Department these days. This individual had I believe it was a DUI in 2021 or 2022. Okay. Does everything, takes care of the DUI, leaves the United States this year. He leaves the United States to get a new visa in, I believe it was August. Leaves in August. He gets a 221G because of the DUI and has to do the panel physician thing where you go to a doctor and show you're not a habitual drunkard. Anyway, goes and does all that, gets cleared, gets his visa issued, enters the United States. 2 months later, September, October, November, December, 3 months later, they canceled his visa. And nothing has changed in his visa history. So we know that it was canceled for the exact same reason that he had to deal with when he already went to the consulate. So even though he went to the consulate, did everything he was supposed to do to get a visa to show compliance, he still had his visa canceled again. And that's, I think, what we're probably going to see continually throughout the duration of this administration. I'm assuming that they're going to do some sort of biannual review and cancel people's visas. And the whole purpose of the visa cancellations and their occurrence so close to the holidays is evident, right? They cancel a bunch of people's visas. Those people need to go home for the holidays. They say, okay, I'm going to go home for the holidays. I'll get my new visa and deal with the cancellation issue. Well, guess what? Now all the appointments are canceled. Now they're canceled under the guise that the social media policy needs to be implemented, and then people can come in for interviews. But if that's the case, why are people being rescheduled for interviews to March, April, and May of next year? Is it really going to take that long to implement a social media policy that's already being implemented for individuals on F1s? Probably not. But the underlying purpose of it is cancel the person's visa, get them stuck outside the country, make it hard for them to even get an interview, and hopefully in the interim, their employer fires them.
Goodness me, what's going to happen? I mean, I think this is the reaction of every immigrant out there because I mean, earlier, like if you follow these rules, if you get these documents right on time, this much, then you've got it. But now it's like you have everything on time, everything checked, rechecked, and yet you don't know what's going to happen. In fact, green card holders are also, I mean, we are all like in a what's going to happen? Like all confused, concerned.
Yeah, it's a drastic change that happened very quick. I mean, they implemented all of the stuff this year was done so quickly and almost not seamlessly because it's intentionally done poorly, right? Because then people are confused about what's happening. It's not like they came out and said, we're going to cancel visas because of these. No, they just do it. And then after the fact, they just make you pick up the pieces and deal with it. But that's really what it is it's the purpose is to just gum up legal immigration to a point where people don't want to participate or employers don't want to participate. I had an employer 2 weeks ago who actually told me that he had to be interviewed I believe it was DOL, the Department of Labor, came and interviewed him about his hiring practices, and basically said that they noticed he was just employing a high number of immigrants, and why aren't you employing more Americans? And I was just thinking, wow, what an interesting thing. The government is now spending time, money, and effort to go out to employers who are complying with the conditions of their LCAs, paying their employees what they're supposed to, putting them where they're supposed to be, following the rules, and now coming to those employers and saying, why don't you have more US-born people working for the company? Does it matter that the US-born person is less qualified than the individual that they're employing? No, apparently not. It's just you should have more US-born employees on your payroll. Otherwise, we're going to come in and check on you. And we're also going to make sure that all these people that are working for you, we're going to do as much as we could possibly do to make it hard for those people to travel, get new visas, and eventually start trying to challenge, their extensions when they go to extend an H1B in the US or change employers. And so all of it's being done to make it just a difficult, tumultuous period for immigration. And I think through the first year, they've lost some cases and they've had some things go their way. And I think the consulates are their strongest ally in this circumstance, because consular non-reviewability protects their judgments and it gives them their coverage to do the kind of stuff that they can't really get away with doing in the United States. So when you cancel somebody's visa, you basically tether them to the US. And I'm being honest with people right now. I'm telling people, like, don't travel. And I understand when you're saying, well, it's the holidays, like I want to go home and be my family. I get that. But if you're going to travel now, I think at this point, we all need to be more comfortable with the idea that if you're going outside the United States and you're trying to get a new visa, that process could take you 3, 4, 5 months. And that's just a reality that is now, starting to kick in as these policies are really implemented. And I would assume that things are going to get worse before they get better, because there's still, at a minimum, 3 more years of this.
Well, I think we'll just have to be more patient, and best thing, friends, is to consult with an immigration attorney. And why not check out attorney Justin Rivera from Wasden Immigration Litigation? You can check out Wasden Immigration Litigation page on LinkedIn as well, and definitely check out the link which you can see on the screen. And I wanted to say hello to Sid Mohan and also Gurkirat. He says, "Hey Justin, thanks for taking the time to do this." And we are really thankful for that.
Yeah, no problem.
So thank you, Gurkiat, also for joining us. And please feel free to post your questions if you have any. Friends, keep commenting wherever you're watching us. We are live right now on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and on X. And yes, drop your questions. So also, like Justin, how does US handle visa revocations, and is like mass cancellation, without notice, even legally possible?
So it is legally possible because the Secretary of State has the authority to revoke a visa, essentially under any justification, as long as it's slightly tethered to reality, under prudential visa revocation. And in that circumstance, they're not required to give you notice and an opportunity to respond. They literally can just say your visa's been revoked. Now, the way that the policy is supposed to work is when a visa is revoked, the individual receives an email from the consulate that issued the visa telling the person, hey, your visa's been revoked. I've seen a lot of those emails in the past month for consults and things like that. So typically they're instructing people, hey, your visa's been revoked. Now they're seeming to go one more step further and saying when you return to obtain a new visa, you actually have to give us back the old one. I'm assuming so they can just stamp it as revoked or canceled. But that's usually the process of how it's done. Prudential visa revocations are, it's something this administration is going to use as a cudgel because it's something that's very difficult, if not impossible, to attack through litigation. Because there is that power vested in the State Department. And so the Secretary of State is going to be making those decisions. Our Secretary of State, in case you don't know, is Marco Rubio, a man who was repeatedly ridiculed while Donald Trump ran for president during his initial term and now serves as the Secretary of State, as proof that, that some lapdogs will always come back to you, apparently. But that's really what they're going to do, is just basically keep saying prudential visa revocations are going to be the basis because they're so difficult, if not impossible, to challenge. I would say if you're in the United States and you're in any non-immigrant visa at this point, you have to be incredibly cautious regarding interactions with law enforcement. And what I mean by that is, if you get arrested, I think if you're intaked and fingerprinted at this point, I think you can just assume your visa is going to get canceled. If you have been arrested in the past, even if it was 8, 9, 10 years ago, and you're on a non-immigrant visa, there's a possibility that your visa is going to be revoked. And so anyone who's in that circumstance or situation needs to be wary, because the fact of the matter is the consulate is supposed to tell you that your visa was revoked. It's possible that they don't send you an email, or that email goes to your spam, or that email, it just doesn't, it goes to an email that you no longer monitor. And in that circumstance, people don't realize their visas have been canceled until, they're going to the consulate for a new visa, or they're trying to get on a plane. So yeah, it's a circumstance where it's not the same as it is with an H1B, where I can go in and type out, my status and see what the status is and know that there's a justification and a decision that comes along with that. In these circumstances, it's literally just, hey, we're letting you know your visa's been revoked and you have to come to the consulate.
Thank you so much, Justin, for taking that up. And well, what do you think is going to happen now? How can these visa holders know if their valid visa was revoked? And can this happen without direct notice?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of in a circumstance where if you haven't received an email, but you've had a run-in with law enforcement, I apologize, I keep coughing. You could try to proactively reach out to the consulate. I would say good luck. They're pretty cagey now in terms of their lack of response. But you could try emailing them or using the Visa Navigator system to see if you could get some feedback from them. I will say with this round of cancellations, the State Department has been pretty on the ball about making sure people are aware that their visas are canceled. And the reason for that is panic-based. They want people to panic. They want people hopefully to be outside of the United States when the visa cancellation occurs, right? So that way they get stuck. But alternatively, if they are here in the United States and you cancel their visa right before the holidays, they have to make a really hard decision, right? Do I risk not being able to come back into the United States, or are you going to just miss the holidays with your family? Which it's a difficult decision for anybody to make, but that's the point. And I've said this over and over, and I really can't impart this knowledge on people more, because I'll have consultations with people where they look at me very perplexed. They look at me and they're just kind of like, that's never happened to our company before, or like, we've never had issues with this before. And I'm like, I feel like I'm having to be like, a whistleblower or somebody who's like screaming off a hilltop when I explain this. You guys got to stop pretending we're in last year, this administration. That's not where we are now. Like, cruelty is the point. The reason why they do these things, or when someone says, why are they doing this to me or to my company? The point is cruelty. They want to disenfranchise people from participation in the immigration system. They don't want people applying for visas. And this is what they want to do to make it so difficult to do it that you take your ball and go home. And like I said earlier, and I'm going to keep saying, this is year 1 of 4. So as we close out this year, we know the tactics that they've employed previously, and we're now going to have to see the tactics they employ next year. Kind of off topic, but just so you guys are aware of this and anybody that's listening, I have seen something occurring enough that I think it can probably be called a trend, in that I have noticed there has been a big uptick in the issuance of 221Gs for individuals that are applying for H1B visas who work with consulting companies, in the circumstance that the individual is working subject to a petition where they are working in-house. So what I've seen is essentially, if they are looking at your H1B petition and they say, this person looks like they're working in-house, they will issue a 221G, interview the individual extensively about the specifics of the project, and then send the petition back to USCIS for FDNS review. And I have seen that enough times that I don't think this is something that's just kind of a one-off. It seems there has to be some sort of policy internally that was made by the State Department to take this cause up, because I've seen it happen to someone who had no documents to prove their project was valid. I've seen it with someone who had documents to prove their project was valid. They treated both cases the same. They seem to operate under the guise that if you have an in-house project and you work for a contractor, a third-party contracting company, or a company that does any level of third-party placement, there is a default within the State Department that your case has a fraud issue associated with it. And so I would say if you are someone that works in that circumstance in the United States presently, and you are going for a visa, you need to be prepared, because you're likely going to be subject to a very high level of scrutiny and a potential issue with FDNS that could conclude with FDNS attempting to revoke the H1B petition.
Thank you so much, Justin, for taking that up. So right now, any visa can have a chance of being revoked. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, with the visa revocations, they're not class specific. They're kind of going after everybody that has a non-immigrant visa in general. And so they're canceling them for, a litany of reasons, overstays and things like that. But their main focus, and what seems to be what's primarily impacting people, is law enforcement issues. And it really doesn't seem like there's any level of cutoff in terms of, how long ago the incident occurred or the scope of the incident. I've seen during the F1 revocations, they were for things as trivial as traffic violations. I've seen a lot of this round of revocations, the most recent ones. I apologize. People always have to cut their yard, apparently, when I'm doing these shows. I've seen a lot for this one be people who've had incidents. DUIs are big, obviously, but also any other petty crime activities. So like, theft and things like that. And so as a result, like it's been across the board, but it is something that I think that primarily is going to be felt by H1B holders, H4s, F1s, because they're, such a wider range of the makeup of the people that are on non-immigrant visas. And so that's who I think the people are that have been the loudest about the issue. So really it's something that I think, like I said before, we're going to see happening, I think biannually, if not more so, where they're just going to do it every couple of months for the people who went out and got new visas and came back in, or for new people that have moved into non-immigrant visas.
So what can I say? This whole year has been so eventful, Justin, right? From January up till now, December, it's almost the end of the year, and there has been so much changes. And I think we can still expect more changes even before the year ends. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, a big thing that we're all watching very closely, because they have started moving it forward, is the changes to the wage level policies, right? Something that the Trump administration tried to do during their first go-round was basically raise all of the wage levels significantly. I mean, to a point that's borderline prohibitive. That's back on the table. And that's something they're trying to look into implementing. And that's something we're going to have to watch very closely, because the truth of the matter is if you implement policies like if you implement policies like 100K visa fee, right, to bring in a new employee, and you put on top of that a wage structure that basically creates a floor that's $180,000, what you're doing is essentially getting rid of entry level work for the H1B program, right? And that's the pipeline, where you have someone that comes in, they study, they get they're on F1, they get a master's degree or a bachelor's degree, they do their OPT, they apply, get selected in the lottery, they get on H1B. And the previous idea had been retaining the people who come to the United States and go to our universities and get degrees, because those are highly specialized employees. Now the idea is basically restrict immigration across the board in any way possible. And the easiest way for that to be done to the H1B is to make it so cost prohibitive to employ someone on an H1B that the individual's they're just not going to hire the individual. Where that kind of confuses me in its actual implementation is I don't think people really understand. I may have talked about this on the show before. I really don't think people understand that companies, if they can't employ these people on H's, are just going to offshore them. And so the company is then going to take that job and put it overseas, and it's not going to grow or increase the U.S. labor market. And in fact, that individual who's no longer a U.S.-based employee is now no longer paying taxes in the United States. So we're basically helping an offshoring movement while also failing to retain money, tax money that these people would bring in. Which the whole long-term thinking of it is very odd. And you're also basically saying we want to weaken the U.S. candidate pool because that's somehow going to make the United States better. So we're going to employ less talented individuals, and that's somehow going to help companies. And that's where I think there's this huge disconnect, as if it's going to be like, no, U.S.-based U.S.-born employers are going to all get jobs now because this small subset of the labor pool is no longer going to be utilized by everyone except really big companies who can actually afford people. I don't think that's going to happen at all. And when it's borne out that way, and the complaint is, well, now the companies are offshoring work, I don't know what the next thing is that they'll pivot to. But for now, the economy is slowing, right? I think it's pretty evident. I think it's obvious in the jobs numbers that we've seen. There's going to be more pressure felt from tariffs. The fact of the matter is the administration is going to look for a boogeyman, right? They have to find somebody. And outside of blaming Joe Biden for everything, because he was the previous president, the other thing that they'll probably turn to will be immigration. And I think it's naturally you've seen that. As the economy grows, no one cares about immigration. If the economy becomes restrictive, then people begin pointing fingers at someone. And one of the fingers that they point at is immigration. Now, don't get me wrong. They would do these policies whether or not the economy is doing well. They just have to use a baseline, right? And their baselines are economic interests and national security. So that's what you're going to see as the rhetoric coming out over January, Feb of next year, when people begin to question these kinds of more restrictive immigration policies.
I don't know what can I say much, all I can say is expect more surprises, but friends, do not lose hope. And it is the holiday season. I just want to know how festive it is, Justin. Is it quieter in any way compared to last year because of the situation?
No, it's quite the opposite. It's, there's just a lot going on now. There's just so much more scrutiny occurring and across the board, which leads to obviously needing to really, hunker down on everything and make sure that we have everything correct when we submit it, hopefully getting proper adjudications. It's getting slower, to be honest. I saw a question over here someone had about non-premium processing. So premium for regular processing cases. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. They're slowing everything down. I mean, they have made tiny jumps in small categories, but generally speaking, you are seeing a giant explosion in the delay of processing times. I have one cap case left that has not been upgraded to premium processing. It is the only cap case that I have that is still pending. We filed that case almost half a year ago, and we still don't have an adjudication on it. And I mean, that's crazy. I will say this: you can hark all you want about the previous administration, about Biden. It wasn't perfect. I wasn't seeing 6-month plus adjudications for regular processes on an H1Bs. That was not happening. And so I would say anticipate them slowing down everything that's not premium. And this is the first time I think I have ever said this, but I'm going to say it. I know other attorneys have said this in the past, and I have pushed back against it because I don't agree, because I do get non-premium cases. I do get premium processing cases approved without RFEs. So I will say I'm still seeing those approvals come in. However, I have seen a significant uptick in RFE'd cases that are in premium processing that literally get RFE'd on day 15. And the RFE is not, there's no level of detail to the RFE. It is a generic, bland specialty occupation, beneficiary qualifications, maintenance of status, email, RFE. There's no analysis. They're not looking at anything. They're not saying, oh, we don't know this. It is a completely generic RFE. And my worry is that we may actually be seeing them do this across the board for premium processing cases, where they're just going to say, we want to delay the adjudication of the case, so just shoot an RFE out on the last day possible, and then make them have to deal with it with the RFE. So going into next year, just kind of a heads up to you. If you're filing cases and you're filing them in premium processing, I'm starting to say, yeah, we can probably anticipate an RFE.
Okay. Thank you so much. As you spoke about that, you already took up Sid Mohan's question. So I hope, Sid Mohan, you're watching and you've gotten your answer. He also had another question, which was like, what will be a good time to go for the first time H1B stamping next year, given all the visa appointment uncertainties? H1B renewal in September 2026.
I would say if you're going to go for stamping, like I said earlier, you need to be prepared to be outside of the U.S. for a couple months. For you, I would probably say maybe go next summer after everything is slowed down, because you want to be going at a time where all of these new policies have already been implemented and are actually running smoothly. Right now, there's too much uncertainty and tumultuous activity with the consulates. So it's just not a good idea to try and go there. I also think that consular officers are becoming more, they've been told to scrutinize petitions more, right? But I think they've also become more prone to lean on administrative processing as a way of delaying their adjudication of cases. So with what that I'm saying is, I've seen more 221Gs on cases that I don't think would typically get 221Gs in the past. And I'm seeing longer delays in visa adjudications. So all that being said, if you're a perfect petitioner, a perfect beneficiary, you work for a good employer that isn't flagged in any of USCIS's systems, you're a good beneficiary, you've never had any issues with maintaining status or anything like that, and you go for a visa interview in next summer, you should hopefully be okay. But even then, I'm telling you, I can't look in a crystal ball and tell you what the world's going to look like exactly at that time. But I would assume, or at least hope, that all of the policies that have been implemented with the social media and enhanced vetting are running at a way where they can just smoothly come in and adjudicate visas. But we'll have to see. For now, my recommendation is just don't travel if you can avoid it. If you're already in the United States, just try to stay here and ride it out, at least for the next couple months, with how bad the scheduling is.
Absolutely. I think it's the best advice. Thank you so much, Justin, for taking that up, and also Sid Mohan for participating with your questions and for being a part of our show. So, Justin, there's more to ask you and finding more answers. I have this next question, and that is why is the government linking these revocations, to public safety? Are these new geopolitical or security concerns driving this?
So no. Yeah, look. Let's be honest with this administration. This administration is entirely overreactive of a circumstance, right? An individual, unfortunately, committed a horrible act at Brown University, and they killed people. It's horrible. That person had a diversity visa that was issued to them in, I think, 2021. As a result of that act, they are now halting the entire diversity visa program, which applies to 55,000 people annually, right? So the specter of national security will likely exist in the decision-making going forward, but it's not a real legitimate concern, right? The concern is, how do we take a circumstance or a tragedy that involves an immigrant and politicize it in a way where we can create a higher enforcement against immigration? And that's really what it is here. I mean, the fact of the matter is that there are tons of policies in place to catch people that are, affiliated with terrorist organizations that are trying to come into the United States. My understanding with this individual is that they were allegedly radicalized after they entered the U.S., which created a vetting issue. But as a result, we're going to pause all diversity visas. It's this idea that there's like a sort of taint on something because of an individual action. Like take the H1B visa, for example. A company, a random company does something, ends up being a fraudulent fraud finding. Okay, well, now the whole H1B system is ripe with fraud, right? So we have to investigate every company as if they are this one company. It's the idea that public safety is being used to not only sort of demonize immigration, but create a concern where if you're a layman, you're not somebody who does this every day or pays significant levels of attention to this. You're not going to know that the ins and outs of immigration. But if you hear they're restricting immigration further because of this one act, then you think, okay, well, they're making the country safer. And I don't think that's their good faith intent. But I do think it's the argument that they will hide behind because, again, the only two that they can point to is national security and the economy. And to point to the economy, they have to admit the economy is not doing well, which is something they don't want to do. So they're going to try and lean on national security as much as they can. But I will tell you, my guess is by middle of next year, they're using the economy as another justification.
Interesting. Let's see. But that's nice, Justin. Thank you so much for sharing. So now, with which visa categories are being re-examined, if you can tell us, and are these older student or work visas now also under renewed scrutiny?
So it's across the board, right? So it's pretty much everybody. But I think the people that we have seen getting the most, having the most issues is basically H1s, H4s, F1s. That's the ones I've seen. I know Ls are getting a higher level of scrutiny too, but it's being applied across the board. But for me, the biggest cancellations I've seen have been on the H4, and the F1s as well. But they're going to use it in every category that they possibly can.
Okay. So I think all in all, I would just say that everybody needs to be careful. They need to be updated. They need to keep a check on these changes that are coming in every day. And it's always best to consult with an immigration attorney. So why not check out Attorney Justin Rivera, from Wasden Immigration Litigation. You can also check out Wasden Immigration Litigation page on LinkedIn and get in touch with them, and also visit this link which you can see on the screen. And apart from that, also friends, like if you have anything to share with us or any questions, keep commenting wherever you're watching us because we're live right now on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and on X. And do follow us, keep in touch with us. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. So my next question for you, Justin, would be, does this term but before that, we have this question on YouTube. Can you clarify whether the reported 85,000 visa revocations represent actual cancellations, administrative reviews, or temporary security holds? So, which visa categories are most, substantively affected? Rajeshwar, I think yeah.
So, yeah, I think the 85 visa revocations are actual revocations. I do think that it's probably a disingenuous number where they've counted multiple people twice, and to kind of boost the numbers. But yeah, the 85,000 is, according to the government, the number. Whether that's true or not, take that with whatever grain of salt you treat statements made by the administration. Yeah, sorry. I just was thinking about the whole Venezuela thing too. And now I'm like, yeah, it's pretty hard to be like, is that legit or not? I think that it's their estimate. It's probably not as legitimate as they claim it is. But for now, it's the number they're going with. And that does represent actual cancellations, meaning the people, their visas are canceled. They have to get new visas if they leave the United States. It is being applied, like I said earlier, across the board, but they are definitely hitting the H1B category hard. Like we said at the top of the call, I do think that this was a premeditated activity. Like it was a circumstance where they're like, let's do this at the end of the year when people are going to be out of the country. And then let's make it impossible for them to get a visa interview. And I think most of us are unlikely to have an employer that would be willing to say, oh yeah, we'll hold your job for 3 months, or you can work 3 months remote, and that's fine. So I think it was done intentionally with the purpose of putting these people in circumstances where it'd be very hard for their employers to keep them. And if you double down on that thinking and get even more conspiratorial, well, if your employer terminates you and you want to get on a new H1B, you're now outside the United States, which means you're subject to the $100,000 fee.
It's crazy, but thank you so much for taking that up. And Rajeshwar, thank you for your question. Very important, and thank you for participating. Don't forget to leave a like. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. And for now, Justin, also if you could tell us, which groups or nationalities that you feel most impacted, and what do we actually know, versus speculation?
I mean, I think since Indian foreign nationals have such a large part of the H-1B visa, they're because of the visa backlog being what it is, I think they're the ones that are really going to be impacted by all of these changes that were made towards the end of the year. I think Chinese foreign nationals are probably going to see a little bit of strain as well. But yeah, I think it's Indian foreign nationals. I think the Indian consulates are, they're going to be slower. They're going to have more wonky adjudications. And I think that it's that. I mean, if you got to look at it this way too. I mean, remember they basically got rid of visa stamping in a country that you don't have a residence, right? And so by doing that, they've pushed everyone back to their country of origin. And now that they crack down on that country specifically or another country specifically, they'll do it in a way to make it as difficult as possible for people to actually be able to immigrate legally to the U.S. I think that the H-1B is something that they target really hard because, just to be blunt, I think Stephen Miller hates the H-1B visa. I don't know if the H-1B visa beat him up in his sleep or something, or what caused his ire towards the visa, but it is definitely at the top of his dislike list. And they have access to the same numbers that we have access to. They know who holds those visas, and obviously they'll make the most strenuous adjustments in the countries that have the predominant people who hold those visas. So I think Indian foreign nationals are most affected. I don't want to out and out say targeted, because straight up they want to target anybody. It doesn't really matter where you're from, unless you're from South Africa. Then you get a special visa to come in. Oh, and white. Sorry.
Got it. But yeah, but what about, how is it going to affect people who are already in the US? In terms of status, maybe travel or re-entry. Re-entry, yes, we got it as they're traveling. But what about status and travel
So
status?
domestic travel, you should be okay. I will say that we have now learned this week, in a move that shocks no one, that the TSA is now sharing information with DHS. So now they are catching people that have deportation orders that are flying domestically. So awesome. But yeah, domestic travel, if you don't have a deportation order, it should still be okay. Status adjudication, it's possible that people that have had their visas canceled will see requests for evidence in subsequent filings, like if they submit an extension or an amendment or even change status. But they're more limited by what they can do when you're in the United States, right? So if you have a previous arrest, then they can claim you're inadmissible, but you would have to be inadmissible for a crime involving moral turpitude. There's very strict guidance on what that is. And so USCIS can't really just make stuff up the way the consulate can when they're refusing to issue an approval. So I think for anyone who's had a visa cancellation, I mean, I would say if you're leaving the US, you're going to be out of it for a while. And I would anticipate getting an RFE. An RFE that can be overcomable based on whatever facts there are with the individual and the arrest, the justification for the arrest. But I would say, yeah, I just expect it. And so as a result of that, I would just say if you have an extension coming up and you had your visa canceled, I would file it in regular processing, maybe take advantage of the fact that it's taking them a long time to adjudicate cases in regular processing, and then just assume you're probably going to get an RFE. The other part about this whole process that does suck for the employee is if that employer gets that RFE and they don't have any prior knowledge of the arrest, right, because it's not like it's something that needed to be disclosed, the employer may just opt not to respond and withdraw the petition. So I know that that's probably going to be another issue that begins to occur next year, because the truth is, these companies are going to talk to their counsel. Their counsel is going to say, this is probably going to be a difficult RFE. It's not worth it. Just pull the employee. And so I think you're going to see a good amount of that next year. But hopefully there are people that are willing to actually respond and try and get their cases approved, especially when they aren't actual crimes involving moral turpitude.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Justin, for taking that up. And I think we do have another question. That is, what does the term silent visa revocation actually mean? And does this practice really exist? When and how do people typically discover a visa revocation at boarding, at the airport, or earlier?
So, yeah, I mean, there are circumstances where you don't ever get noticed properly about your visa revocation. And the first time you find out about it is when you're outside the United States trying to travel back in. I have had clients who did not know their visas were canceled until they tried to get on a plane and were basically told they couldn't get on the plane. So I have actually seen that happen before, but that's usually a more extreme circumstance. Typically people are notified via email from the consulate, but they can miss that. And then, yeah, they're in a circumstance where they're either trying to go through CBP at out of the country, like Abu Dhabi, for example, and that's when they find out, or they're literally trying to board the plane and they're told that they can't. So that can happen. I've seen it be more of a rare circumstance, but it is possible. And it's scary, obviously, because if you have no notice, what's your recourse? You have to reach out to the consulate and see if they'll even give you information about the revocation. I have had a person who, sorry to cough so much today. I had a person who got a visa. It got canceled 3 days after they got it. They didn't know until they were going to the airport, and then had to go back and apply for a visa again. And they got the visa and were basically told, our bad for canceling it. So I've seen that happen. So like I said before, the consulates are kind of turning into the wild, wild west. And so I would be cautious to go apply for a visa in the near future. But if you do, I strongly recommend you talk to an attorney, especially if you've been in the United States before, you have an F1 immigration history, an H1B immigration history, anything like that. It behooves you to have a conversation, go through anything, and pick out any nits or issues that might exist. And with that, I think we're done, since we've now gone over an hour.
Mhm. Absolutely. And friends, why not check out Attorney Justin Rivera from Wasden Immigration Education? And yes, in fact, if you need a one-on-one consultation as well, you can even reach out to them on their LinkedIn page, Wasden Immigration Education, or why not check out this link which you can see on the screen. And yes, definitely. I mean, that was the last question for under this topic, but I think we can expect a lot of letters to Santa asking for a visa, US
Yeah.
visa, maybe solving their visa problem. So, what do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I hope so. I don't know. I wish everyone a Merry Christmas, or Happy New Year's, whatever it is you celebrate. May you celebrate it, and have a good time with your families, and we all get a little bit of rest before we get back into it all next year, and do this all again. And I know I've been, as always, because this is the nature of the year, I've been very doom and gloom, but it's not all doom and gloom. There are still cases getting approved. There are still people being issued visas. We just had a client who has been embroiled in litigation for almost 2 years over a fraud finding, who got a notice of intent to deny her I-485 with a very long laundry list of reasons under that case. We responded to that, and USCIS has issued a new interview notice for the person to come back in. So that person's case is still being adjudicated despite 2 years of litigation and all that stuff. We had another case, motion to reopen for an I-485 denial that was just approved last week. And they reopened the case. The person's case is being readjudicated. They got an interview notice, so hopefully their case is going to be approved too. But I do want to tell you guys that there are cases out there that are still being fought and won. It's not all doom and gloom, but it is a circumstance and situation now where I cannot imagine anybody doing immigration in this era without an attorney. Like, I understand that you guys are smart people, especially, the people on H1s that have to, have degrees and all that. I know you guys are smart people, but I cannot stress enough, like, get an attorney. I would prefer it to be me, but even if it's not me, let it be someone else. Make sure you know what it is you're doing. Either when you apply for a benefit, when you go to the consulate, when you come back to the US. I literally spoke to a guy this morning who their employee got 221G'd, and he said to me, we have never in our company's history had to talk to our employees about what they say at the consulate. Never. And that company has been around for 15 plus years. And he was saying to me, I don't understand it. We've never done anything wrong. We've never gotten in trouble with FDNS or anything. Nothing's ever been bad with our company. We are compliant. We follow the rules. They still got stuck in 221G. And that person who went in for that interview was not properly prepared. They didn't know how to answer the questions. They did not understand that there is enhanced vetting on these visa applications. So yes, please do talk to somebody before you file or speak to anybody that is part of the U.S. immigration process.
There you go. Thank you so much, Justin. What can I say? I think we'll just wish better. And absolutely, I mean, with that, we'll just have to wrap up today's session on a good note. I mean, thank you so much, Justin, for that. The little hope that you brought us with. And we are really looking forward for the year end, of course, the new year that's coming up. And thank you for joining us. Wishing you a great Christmas ahead, yeah, joyful, holiday season out there. And thank you so much for your valuable time and for, patiently taking up all of our questions.
You're very welcome. Thank you guys too. Have a good year. Bye.
You too. So that's it. I thank you so much, all you folks out there, for joining us today, and absolutely for your time. And I wish that each one of you have a very Merry Christmas and definitely a joyful holiday season. Of course, we are looking forward for great things before the year ends. Hopefully, a better year ahead. But thank you so much, everyone, for being such an engaged audience. So this is a thank you note from our side. Thank you for watching Immigration Talk Show for today. Don't forget to leave a like, also subscribe to our channel, hit that bell icon, and share with your friends. They could benefit with all these important information on immigration that we had on today's session. So with that, it's a bye for now, but stay tuned on our channel because there's a lot more important updates coming up for you. So this is Nipasa saying bye for now.